I never thought the person I was planning to spend my life with would rip the ring off my finger and throw it out the window. But that's exactly what happened this morning. And I just stood there, shocked, numb, like my soul had been ripped out of my body. Milan's face was red with anger, and his eyes, those eyes that used to look at me with so much love, now held nothing but frustration and exhaustion. "You don't get it, Cash. You never have," he screamed, and then that ring, the symbol of our engagement, our future, our promises, he threw it away like it was worthless trash. I watched in what felt like slow motion as it flew through the air and disappeared out the window. My chest tightened with pain, but I couldn't find the words to respond. Maybe I was just tired too, tired of constantly justifying myself, tired of wondering if I was the problem, tired of walking on eggshells in my own relationship. This wasn't the first time Milan had treated me this way. Over the past few months he'd changed, become distant, angry, constantly irritated by the smallest things. There was a time when he'd surprise me with impromptu dates, take me on late-night drives just to see me smile. Now, he came home late, if he came home at all, and when he did, all he did was yell at me about everything I was doing wrong. I'd convinced myself it was work stress, maybe family issues he wasn't telling me about. But today when he threw that ring, something clicked. These weren't just bad days or rough patches. This was who he'd become, and I'd been making excuses for him. "Milan, what did you just do?" My voice shook as I asked the question, though I already knew the answer. He turned toward me, and for one brief second, I thought I saw regret flash across his face. Like maybe he realized he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. But then he looked away and said coldly, "I don't want to hear anything right now, Cash. Just be quiet." Be quiet? I could have stayed quiet and let my life fall apart around me. But not today. Something broke inside me in that moment. Maybe my self-respect, maybe my patience, maybe both. I pulled out my phone and typed a message I never thought I'd send. I was texting my old friend Finley, who worked in real estate. "I need a penthouse. As soon as possible." Milan noticed me typing and asked, "What are you doing?" For the first time there was a hint of panic in his voice. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked to the bedroom and pulled out my suitcase. The decision to leave wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. Every item I placed in that bag felt like a step toward a new future, toward freedom. I started with the essentials: clothes, toiletries, my laptop. Then I grabbed a few personal items: the framed photo of my parents, the journal I'd been writing in since college, my favorite books. Milan appeared in the doorway, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Was it disbelief? Fear? Regret? "You're really doing this?" he asked quietly. His anger seemingly evaporated, replaced by something that almost looked like vulnerability. "What choice do I have?" I replied without looking at him. "You just threw away our engagement ring like it meant nothing. Like I meant nothing." He stepped into the room and I could feel him getting closer. "That's not fair, Cash. You know I didn't mean it like that." I stopped packing and finally looked at him directly. "Then how did you mean it, Milan?" "Because from where I'm standing, actions speak louder than words. And your actions have been screaming at me for months that you don't want this anymore." He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. What could he say? We both knew I was right. The silence between us was heavy, filled with all the things we'd left unsaid for so long. The resentment, the disappointment, the slow death of what we once had. I zipped up my suitcase and grabbed my backpack. As I headed toward the door, Milan finally found his voice. "Where are you going to go?" "I'll figure it out," I said simply. And I meant it. Anywhere was better than staying here, in this apartment that had become a prison of broken promises and shattered dreams. My phone buzzed. It was Finley. "Found you something perfect. High-rise downtown, available immediately." "Want to see it?" I typed back quickly. "Send me the address." "I'll take it." Milan saw me texting and moved to block my path. "Cash, please, let's talk about this. We can work it out. Every couple fights." "This isn't a fight, Milan," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "This is a pattern, and I'm done being part of it." I moved past him and walked to the front door. My hand was on the doorknob when he spoke again, softer this time. "I love you." Those 3 words used to mean everything to me. Now they just felt empty, like coins tossed into a wishing well that had run dry. I turned to look at him one last time. Love isn't enough when there's no respect. And you stopped respecting me a long time ago. I walked out and closed the door behind me. In the hallway, I finally let myself breathe. My hands were shaking, and my eyes were burning with unshed tears. But I kept walking. I pressed the elevator button and waited, half expecting Milan to come running after me. But he didn't. When the elevator arrived and I stepped inside, I caught a glimpse of our apartment door still closed. No dramatic chase. No last-minute declaration. Just silence. Maybe that was fitting. Our relationship had been dying quietly for months. This was just the final exhale. As the elevator descended, I looked at my left hand, at the pale circle of skin where the ring used to be. That mark would fade eventually. Just like the pain would. At least, that's what I told myself. My phone buzzed again. Finley had sent the penthouse details. Luxury building, floor-to-ceiling windows. Move-in ready. It was perfect. More than I needed, really. But maybe that was the point. Maybe I needed to remind myself that I deserved more. More than settling. More than being someone's emotional punching bag. More than a relationship where I constantly questioned my own worth. I walked out of the building into the bright morning sunlight. The world looked different somehow. Sharper, clearer, more real. I hailed a cab and gave the driver Finley's office address. As we pulled away from the curb, I didn't look back. Not once, because looking back would only show me what I was leaving behind. And right now, I needed to focus on what was ahead. The future was uncertain, terrifying even. But it was mine, and that was enough. The next few hours passed in a strange blur of paperwork, key exchanges, and Finley's reassuring presence. He'd always been good at knowing when to talk and when to just be there. Right now, he was giving me space to process everything while handling all the logistics. "You sure about this?" he asked as we stood in the lobby of my new building, a sleek glass tower that looked like something out of a magazine. "I mean, I'm not questioning your decision. I just want to make sure you're okay." "Honestly, I don't know if I'm okay," I admitted. "But I know staying there would have destroyed me. So this has to be better, right?" Finley squeezed my shoulder. "It will be. Give it time." The elevator ride to the 23rd floor was smooth and quiet. When the doors opened, Finley led me down a carpeted hallway to Unit 23007. He handed me the keys, and I noticed my hands were still trembling slightly as I unlocked the door. The apartment took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows lined the entire living room, offering a panoramic view of the city. The space was open, modern and filled with natural light. It was the complete opposite of the cramped, dark apartment I'd shared with Milan. "What do you think?" Finley asked, though my expression probably already answered his question. "It's perfect," I whispered. "It's exactly what I need." After Finley left, promising to check on me tomorrow, I stood alone in my new space. The silence was different here, not oppressive like it had become at Milan's place, but peaceful, liberating even. I walked to the windows and looked out at the city stretched below me, people going about their lives, completely unaware that mine had just been turned upside down. My phone started buzzing incessantly. Milan. I knew it would be him even before I looked at the screen. The messages came rapid fire. "Where are you? Please come back. We need to talk. I'm sorry." Sorry. That word had lost all meaning between us. How many times had he said it over the past months, only to repeat the same hurtful behavior? Sorry without change was just manipulation with better vocabulary. I muted the conversation and set my phone face down on the kitchen counter. Tomorrow I'd figure out what to say to him, how to officially end things. But tonight, I just needed to exist in this new space, without the weight of his expectations pressing down on me. I found myself exploring every corner of the penthouse. The bedroom with its ensuite bathroom, the small office space that overlooked the street, the modern kitchen, with appliances I'd probably never learned to use properly. Each room felt like a possibility, a blank canvas where I could create whatever life I wanted. But exhaustion eventually caught up with me. I realized I hadn't eaten all day, and my suitcase was still sitting unopened by the door where I'd dropped it. I ordered food from a nearby restaurant, Thai food, which Milan had always hated, which meant we'd never ordered it. Such a small thing, choosing my own dinner without having to consider someone else's preferences, but it felt significant somehow. While waiting for the delivery, I unpacked my suitcase. hanging my clothes in the spacious closet, arranging my toiletries in the pristine bathroom. These simple acts felt like reclaiming pieces of myself. I put the photo of my parents on the bedside table and my journal in the desk drawer. This place was already starting to feel more like home than Milan's apartment had in months. The food arrived and I ate it sitting on the floor by the windows, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled over the skyline. The pad thai was delicious, spicy and tangy, and everything Milan would have complained about. I smiled despite everything, despite the ache in my chest that hadn't quite gone away. My phone lit up again. More messages from Milan. This time I made the mistake of reading them. I found the ring. It's damaged, but I can get it fixed. We can fix this, Cash. Please just tell me where you are. The ring. Our engagement ring. The one he'd thrown away like garbage. Now he wanted to fix it? The symbolism wasn't lost on me. He'd broken something precious and now expected me to be grateful he was willing to repair it. But some things once broken could never be the same. Trust was like that. Love was like that. I typed out several responses and deleted them all. What was there to say? That I was hurt? He knew that. That I was done? My actions had already made that clear. Eventually, I settled on something simple. I need space. Don't contact me for a while. His response came immediately. How long is a while? I didn't answer. I didn't owe him a timeline for my healing. That night, I lay in a bed that was mine alone. In an apartment that was mine alone, looking up at a ceiling that held no memories of fights or tears or disappointment. The mattress was new, the sheets were hotel quality, and everything smelled fresh and clean. No lingering cologne, no half-empty coffee cups on the nightstand, no passive-aggressive notes about things I'd forgotten to do. Sleep didn't come easily, though. My mind kept replaying the morning. Milan's face twisted with anger, the ring flying through the air, the sound of the door closing behind me. But mixed in with those painful memories were other thoughts. The excitement of this new space, the freedom to make my own choices, the possibility that maybe, just maybe, leaving was the bravest thing I'd ever done. Around midnight, I got up and made myself tea chamomile, which I'd always kept hidden because Milan said it smelled like dirty socks. I sat in the dark living room, sipping it slowly, watching the occasional car pass on the street below. The city never really slept, and neither, it seemed, did I. My phone buzzed one more time. Against my better judgment, I checked it. Milan, I love you. I know I messed up. I know I don't deserve another chance. But I'm asking anyway. Please. I set the phone down and finished my tea. Love and deserve. Two words that didn't always go together. I'd loved Milan. Maybe still did in some wounded, complicated way. But did he deserve another chance? Did I deserve to give him one? These were questions I couldn't answer at midnight in an empty apartment with my whole world rearranged. What I did know was this. I deserved peace. I deserved respect. I deserved to wake up without anxiety gnawing my stomach. And right now, in this moment, I had all of those things. Whatever happened next could wait until morning. I went back to bed and surprisingly fell asleep quickly. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking up to check if Milan had come home, without listening for his key in the lock, without bracing myself for whatever mood he'd be in. I just slept, deeply and dreamlessly, in a space that was wholly and completely mine. Morning light filtered through the massive windows, and for a few disoriented seconds, I didn't remember where I was. Then it all came rushing back. Milan, the ring. The decision to leave this new penthouse that was supposed to be my fresh start. I stretched in bed, noticing how quiet everything was. No traffic noise from the street, no neighbors arguing through thin walls, no Milan moving around the apartment with that heavy, resentful energy he'd been carrying lately. I made coffee in the pristine kitchen, figuring out the fancy espresso machine through trial and error. The coffee tasted better than it probably was. Everything tastes better when you're drinking it in peace. I took my cup to the balcony, stepping outside into the cool morning air. The city was waking up below me. People starting their commutes, joggers on the sidewalks, the whole world in motion while I stood still, trying to figure out what came next. My phone had been mercifully quiet overnight, but when I checked it, there were 3 more messages from Milan, all sent in the early morning hours. I could picture him lying awake, typing and deleting and typing again, trying to find the magic words that would undo everything. But there were no magic words. That's not how healing worked. I was halfway through my coffee when someone knocked on the door. My heart jumped. Had Milan somehow found me? But then I remembered he didn't know where I lived now. I'd been careful not to give him any details. Through the peephole, I saw Finley holding 2 coffee cups in a paper bag that probably contained pastries. I opened the door, and his concerned smile told me he'd been worried about me. "Figured you might want company," he said, walking in and looking around approvingly, "and that you probably haven't eaten anything resembling breakfast." "You're a lifesaver," I said, accepting one of the coffee cups. "And you're right. I haven't really thought about food." We sat in the living room and Finley pulled out croissants and fruit from the bag. For a while we just ate in comfortable silence. Finley had always been good at reading the room, knowing when I needed to talk and when I just needed someone to be present. So he finally said, brushing crumbs off his jeans, "How are you really doing?" I considered lying, saying I was fine, that everything was great. But this was Finley. He'd known me since college, had seen me through breakups and family drama and career setbacks. He deserved honesty. "I feel like I'm floating," I admitted, "like I made this huge decision and now I'm just existing in the aftermath, waiting to see if I sink or swim." "You'll swim," Finley said with certainty. "You're stronger than you think, Cash. You always have been." "Milan keeps messaging me. He found the ring. Wants to fix it. Wants to fix us." Finley's expression darkened slightly. "What do you want?" That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? A week ago I would have said I wanted Milan to be the person he used to be. Wanted our relationship to work. Wanted the future we'd planned together. But now, I want to feel like myself again, I said slowly. I want to wake up without that knot of anxiety in my stomach. I want to make decisions without second-guessing how someone else will react. I want to remember who I was before I started shrinking myself to fit into someone else's life. Finley nodded, understanding, crossing his features. "That's a good start. Is it terrible that I'm not thinking about him right now?" I asked. "Shouldn't I be sadder? More torn up about it?" "You've been sad for months, Cash. You've been mourning this relationship while you were still in it. What you're feeling now isn't terrible, it's relief. And there's nothing wrong with that." His words hit me harder than I expected. He was right. I had been grieving for a long time, watching the person I loved transform into someone I didn't recognize, feeling our connection fray and tear. The actual leaving was just the final step in a process that had been happening slowly, painfully, for months. After Finley left, promising to check in later, I decided to explore the neighborhood. I needed to get out of the apartment, needed to move, needed to see my new surroundings in daylight. I changed into comfortable clothes and headed out, no destination in mind. The area was nicer than where I'd lived with Milan. More green spaces, better maintained buildings, cafes on every corner. I found myself walking without purpose, just observing, taking it all in. There was a bookstore with a cat sleeping in the window, a small park where people were doing yoga on the grass, a coffee shop with outdoor seating where a guy around my age was working on a laptop, completely absorbed in whatever he was creating. I bought an iced coffee from a street vendor and sat on a bench, watching the world go by. A young couple walked past, holding hands and laughing about something. A year ago, that would have been Milan and me. We used to walk through the city for hours, finding new restaurants to try, making up stories about the people we passed. When had we stopped doing that? When had we stopped being those people? My phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. "Milan." I stared at his name on the screen, my thumb hovering over the answer button. Part of me wanted to hear his voice, wanted to hear him apologize properly, wanted to believe he could change. But another part, the part that was finally learning to protect itself, knew that answering would just open a door I'd worked hard to close. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. A minute later, a notification appeared. New voicemail. I deleted it without listening. Whatever he had to say could wait. Or maybe it didn't matter at all anymore. As I walked back to the penthouse, I realized I was making plans in my head. Plans that didn't involve Milan. I wanted to repaint the office space. Maybe set up a reading corner by the windows. I wanted to host a dinner party once I got settled. Invite Finley and other friends I'd lost touch with while trying to keep Milan happy. I wanted to join a gym in the building, take a cooking class, maybe even try dating again eventually. These weren't revolutionary plans. They were simple, ordinary things. But they were mine, and that made them extraordinary. Back in the apartment, I stood in the middle of the living room and just breathed. The space still felt too big, too empty, too unfamiliar, but it also felt full of possibility. For the first time in years, my future wasn't tied to someone else's expectations or moods or decisions. It was a blank page and I got to write whatever I wanted on it. My phone buzzed. Another message from Milan. I know you're seeing these. I know you're ignoring me. I just need you to know I'm not giving up. I'll wait as long as it takes. I read it twice, then turned off my phone completely. His waiting wasn't my responsibility. His healing wasn't my burden to carry. I'd spent too long trying to fix things that weren't mine to fix. Trying to save someone who didn't want to save himself. Now it was time to save myself instead. A week had passed since I'd moved into the penthouse, and I was slowly building a routine that felt like mine. Morning jogs around the neighborhood, working from home at the desk by the window. Evenings spent either cooking simple meals or reading books I'd been meaning to get to for years. Everything was simple, peaceful, exactly the kind of life I'd always wanted but never had the space to create. Yet something kept nagging at me, not Milan's absence exactly, but his presence in my mind. Every morning when I woke up, my first thought was whether he was thinking about me too or if I was the only one weak enough to still care. His messages hadn't stopped. Every morning and every night, like clockwork, a new message would appear. Each one was different but carried the same desperate energy. The words changed but the meaning stayed constant. He wanted me back. He was sorry he couldn't live without me. Each message planted seeds of guilt and confusion in my mind. Was I making the right choice? Was I being too dramatic about everything? But then I'd remember that moment when the ring flew through the air and my resolve would solidify again. That memory had become a permanent scar in my mind, one that wouldn't fade no matter how much time passed. One evening, after staring at yet another message from him, I made a decision. I needed closure, and probably he did too. Living in this limbo where we were technically still engaged, but living completely separate lives wasn't healthy for either of us. I typed out a message before I could second-guess myself. Meet me at the Central Park bench tomorrow, 5 in the evening. His response came within seconds. I'll be there. Thank you for this, Cash. The next day, I arrived 10 minutes early. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, and my palms were slick with nervous sweat. I sat on the bench and watched the world around me. Couples walking hand in hand, children playing on the grass, joggers passing by with their dogs. I wondered if Milan and I could have ever been that normal, that uncomplicated. When he finally appeared, I barely recognized him. His face looked gaunt, with dark circles carved deep under his eyes. He'd lost weight, and his clothes hung loosely on his frame. His shirt was wrinkled, his shoes weren't tied properly, and his hair looked like he'd just run his fingers through it without actually styling it. This wasn't the Milan who spent 45 minutes getting ready every morning. Cash. He said my name like it was something sacred, something he'd been dying to say out loud. He sat down next to me and reached for my hand, but I pulled away before he could touch me. The hurt in his eyes was immediate and raw, but I kept my expression neutral. Milan, I need clarity about what's happening between us. You treated me like I was nothing, like our relationship meant nothing. So what's changed now? Why all these messages? He buried his face in his hands, and when he spoke, his voice was muffled and broken. I was terrified, Cash. Watching you succeed, watching you become more independent, it scared me. I kept thinking you'd realize you didn't need me anymore and leave. So I pushed you away first. I know how insane that sounds now. I know it was completely backwards and self-destructive. But that's the truth. His confession hit me like a physical blow. So you hurt me intentionally to prevent me from leaving. That's your explanation? You're a grown man, Milan. You're supposed to be mature enough to handle your insecurities without destroying the person you claim to love. He had no response. He just sat there, shoulders slumped, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. I took a deep breath and forced myself to say what I'd come here to say. Milan, I loved you. Past tense. I really did. But love means nothing when there's no respect or trust holding it together, and you broke both of those things beyond repair. His head snapped up. Past tense? You're saying you don't love me anymore? Not even a little bit? The panic in his voice was palpable, like he was only just now realizing that I was serious about leaving, that this wasn't just a temporary fight we could smooth over with apologies and promises. I stood up and brushed the dust off my jeans, looking down at him one last time. I don't know what I feel anymore, Milan. All I know is that for the first time in months, I'm choosing my own happiness. I'm putting myself first, and that has to be enough. I walked away, and this time he didn't try to stop me. He just sat there on that bench, looking defeated and broken. And even though part of me ached seeing him like that, I kept walking. Because staying would have meant sacrificing the peace I'd finally found, and I wasn't willing to do that anymore. Not for him, not for anyone. The walk back to the penthouse felt longer than usual. My mind was replaying every word of our conversation, analyzing his confession, questioning whether I'd been too harsh. But then I'd remember all the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, all the times I'd apologized for things that weren't my faults, all the ways I'd made myself smaller to accommodate his insecurities, and I knew I'd made the right choice. When I got home, I stood at the window and watched the sun set over the city. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, beautiful and temporary, just like everything else. My phone buzzed with a new message from Milan. I understand. I'll give you space. But I'm not giving up on us. I'll prove I can change. I read it once, then set my phone down. His determination to change wasn't my responsibility to manage. His growth wasn't my burden to carry. I'd spent too long trying to fix things that were never mine to fix in the first place. Now it was time to focus on fixing myself, on rebuilding the parts of me that had crumbled during those last toxic months with him. I made dinner, a simple pasta dish with vegetables, and ate it while watching a show I'd been wanting to see. No one to consult about what to watch, no one to complain about my food choices, no one to make me feel guilty for taking up space, just me, my dinner, and the freedom to exist exactly as I was. It was such a small thing, but it felt revolutionary. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. No anxiety dreams. No waking up in the middle of the night with my heart racing. No listening for footsteps that never came. Just deep, uninterrupted sleep in a bed that was mine alone. And when I woke up the next morning, the first thought in my head wasn't about Milan. It was about what I wanted to do with my day. That felt like progress. That felt like the beginning of something better. Life continued moving forward, but my heart still felt slightly stuck in place. Milan's face would appear in my dreams at night, and sometimes in the morning when I was drinking coffee alone, I'd swear I could hear his voice. Finley had suggested I focus on old hobbies, things that used to bring me joy before my entire world revolved around making someone else happy. So I started painting again, something I'd loved as a kid but had completely abandoned in adulthood. Each time I applied color to canvas, it felt like I was processing emotions I didn't have words for. The blues represented my pain, the reds captured my anger, and the yellows, those were for the hope I was starting to feel about the future. 2 peaceful weeks passed. I lost myself in creating, experimenting with different techniques and color combinations, rediscovering parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. But then one afternoon while I was working on a particularly complex piece in the living room, the doorbell rang. I assumed it was a delivery or maybe Finley stopping by unannounced. Instead, when I opened the door, Milan was standing there holding a small velvet box. "I know you said not to come here, but please just hear me out for 5 minutes, Cash." His eyes were pleading, filled with a desperation that made my resolve waver slightly. Against my better judgment, I let him inside. Maybe it was a mistake, but some part of me still cared about him, still wanted to believe people could change. He walked in slowly, looking around at my new space, his gaze lingering on the paintings scattered around the room. "Did you make all of these? They're incredible." The appreciation in his voice sounded genuine, not patronizing or performative. I didn't respond, just waited for him to say whatever he'd come to say. He held out the velvet box. "This is the ring, Cash. I searched for it all night after you left. I went through the entire building, checked every corner of the courtyard, even looked in the drainage grates. It's damaged, obviously. The band is bent, and one of the stones is missing. But a jeweler can fix it, and maybe we can fix us too." I opened the box carefully. There it was. Our engagement ring scratched and incomplete, a perfect metaphor for our relationship. Broken but still somehow existing, still carrying the weight of everything it once meant. Milan, a jeweler can repair this ring in a few days, but can we repair what's broken between us? Can trust be rebuilt once it's shattered? The question had been haunting me for days, and I needed to hear his answer. He met my eyes, and for the first time I saw genuine contemplation there, instead of defensiveness or excuses. I'm working on changing, Cash. I started therapy 3 days after you left. Here. This is my therapist's card if you don't believe me. He pulled out his wallet and showed me a business card for Dr. Sarah Mitchell, licensed therapist. I'm confronting my insecurities, learning why I self-sabotage, understanding how my fear of abandonment made me push away the one person who never wanted to leave. I want to become someone you can be proud of, someone who deserves you. Just give me one more chance. I stood there feeling completely torn apart. One part of me, the part that remembered how good we used to be together, wanted to say yes immediately. But the other part, the part that had spent countless nights crying, the part that had been systematically broken down over months, was screaming at me to protect myself. I need time to think about this, Milan. I can't promise anything right now, not yes, not no, just time. The honesty felt both liberating and terrifying. Something like hope flickered in his eyes, mixed with disappointment that I hadn't immediately agreed. He nodded slowly, accepting my boundary. Take whatever time you need. I'll wait. I mean that. He left the ring box on my coffee table and walked out without trying to hug me or extract any more promises. When the door closed behind him, I stared at that small velvet box for a long time. How could something so tiny carry so much emotional weight? I placed it next to my paintings, and without consciously deciding to, I started a new piece. An abstract representation of a broken ring with light somehow streaming through the cracks. The painting consumed me for the next few days. I worked on it obsessively, layering colors and textures, trying to capture the complicated feelings swirling inside me. Was the light streaming through the breaks a sign of hope or just wishful thinking? Was I painting what I saw or what I wanted to see? Finley came by and found me covered in paint, still working at 2 in the morning. Cash, you need to sleep, and probably eat something that isn't coffee and crackers. I can't stop until it's finished, I told him, adding another stroke of gold to represent the light. He looked at the painting for a long moment. It's beautiful. Sad but beautiful. Is this about Milan? It's about everything, I said. About breaking and healing, and not knowing which one you're doing at any given moment. Finley made me step away from the canvas and actually eat a proper meal. While we sat on the floor eating takeout, he asked the question I'd been avoiding. Are you going to take him back? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to believe people can change, but another part knows that wanting someone to change and actually seeing them change are two completely different things. What does your gut tell you? I thought about it, really thought about it. My gut says to protect myself. But my heart keeps remembering who he used to be, who we used to be together. Then maybe, Finley said carefully, you need to give yourself permission to keep taking time. You don't owe him a quick decision. You don't owe him anything except honesty. He was right. I didn't owe Milan a timeline or a guarantee. I owed myself the space to heal and figure out what I actually wanted, not what I felt obligated to want. The ring box sat on my table for days unopened. A constant reminder of the choice I hadn't made yet, and somehow that felt exactly right. Existing in the uncertainty, not rushing toward an answer just to have resolution. For once I was okay with not knowing what came next. 2 months slipped by, each day bringing small changes I barely noticed until I looked back and saw how far I'd come. Milan kept his word about giving me space. His messages became infrequent and respectful. Thinking of you today. Tried that coffee place you always talked about, saw the most amazing sunset and wanted to share it with you. No pressure, no manipulation, no desperate pleading for attention. This restraint made me think seriously about whether real change was possible, whether therapy was actually helping him become a better version of himself. My own life had settled into something that felt sustainable. I was excelling at work, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected during the worst months with Milan, and discovering new parts of myself I hadn't known existed. When Finley mentioned a small gallery was looking for local artists for an upcoming exhibition, I submitted 3 of my paintings on a whim. To my complete shock, they accepted all 3 and even featured one as part of their promotional materials. The painting they chose was the one about my old life versus my new one. Darkness and chaos gradually giving way to light and peace. People responded to it more than I'd expected. Several visitors at the opening reception told me it resonated with their own experiences of leaving toxic situations and rebuilding themselves. One painting even sold to a collector who said it reminded her of her own journey through divorce. Standing there listening to strangers connect with my art felt surreal, like I'd stumbled into someone else's successful life by accident. The exhibition opening was on a Friday evening. I wore a simple black outfit, nothing fancy, but I felt more confident than I had in years. Finley was there, of course, introducing me to people and making sure I actually talked to potential buyers instead of hiding in the corner. I was deep in conversation with a gallery owner about possibly showing more work when something made me glance toward the entrance. Milan was there, standing at the edge of the crowd watching me. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, his hair styled the way it used to be, looking like the man I'd fallen in love with years ago, but something in his expression was different. Softer, maybe. There was pride in his eyes as he looked at my paintings, but no possessiveness, no jealousy that I was succeeding without him. When our eyes met, he smiled, a genuine bittersweet smile that somehow said everything and nothing at once. After the main reception ended and people started trickling out, I stepped outside for some air. Milan was already there, hands in his pockets, clearly waiting for me but trying not to be obvious about it. He approached slowly when he saw I was alone. "Congratulations on tonight, Cash. Your work is extraordinary. I always knew you were talented, but seeing you express yourself so fully, it's incredible. You're finally showing the world what I always saw in you." His compliment was sincere, with none of the backhanded quality his praise used to have. "Thank you, Milan," I said, and surprisingly the silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It felt natural, like we were 2 people who'd known each other well and were learning to exist in each other's orbit without collision. "I'm not here to pressure you, or ask for anything," he said after a moment. "I just wanted you to know something. I'll wait as long as you need. Whether that's another month, another year, or forever. And if you eventually decide to move on with someone else, someone who makes you happier than I ever could, I'll accept that too. Your happiness matters more to me than my own wants." I looked at him carefully, searching for any sign of manipulation or false promises. But all I saw was someone who'd done real work on himself, who'd grown in ways I hadn't thought possible. This wasn't the same man who'd thrown a ring out the window in anger. This was someone new, or maybe someone who'd always been buried under layers of fear and insecurity. A cool breeze picked up, rustling through the trees that lined the street. In that moment, I felt like the universe was holding its breath, waiting to see what I'd choose. I smiled, a real warm smile that came from a place of peace rather than politeness. "Milan, I honestly don't know what the future holds. But maybe, and I mean maybe, there's a possibility for something eventually. Right now, I just need more time to focus on myself, to make sure I'm whole on my own before I consider sharing my life with anyone again." He nodded, understanding and acceptance written clearly across his face. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. And even if you decide the answer is no, I'll be grateful you gave me the chance to apologize and show you I'm trying to be better." He walked away without asking for a hug or trying to extract promises about staying in touch. And strangely, I didn't feel guilty about not running after him. I felt peaceful. For the first time in our entire relationship, we were both focusing on our individual healing instead of trying to fix each other. We were finally giving each other space to grow without demanding anything in return. That maybe felt like enough for me, for him, for whatever our complicated history meant. Because sometimes relationships don't have neat endings or new beginnings. Sometimes they exist in liminal spaces, where people learn and grow apart before possibly maybe finding their way back together. And sometimes the greatest act of love is letting someone go so you can both become better versions of yourselves. I looked up at the night sky, at the stars scattered across the darkness like tiny promises of light. For the first time in what felt like forever, I believed I could shine that brightly too on my own strength, creating my own light instead of reflecting someone else's. Whether Milan ended up being part of my future or just an important chapter in my past, I knew I'd be okay. Better than okay, actually. I'd be. The city stretched out before me, full of possibilities I hadn't allowed myself to consider when I was busy trying to save a relationship that was drowning us both. Now standing here alone but not lonely, I realized that leaving hadn't been about giving up on love. It had been about refusing to give up on myself. And that made all the difference.